welcome to our Liberty House. My name is Beth, and I'm doing a unique project series where I'm going to show you how I transformed this part of the garden. Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Beth from our Liberty House, and today I'm going to be stenciling the concrete on the side yard near our garden to kind of update and give it a little bit more color and something fun. Last week you would have seen that I stained the concrete in preparation, so I wanted kind of a nice base color prior to adding a stencil pattern onto the concrete itself. So that's what I'm going to be doing today, and I'm going to bring you along with me. So if you're ready to get started, make sure to like this video. If you missed last week, go check that one out, and we're going to get stenciling. So it's been a full week since I stained the concrete here. So today I'm going to prep it, just kind of sweep any dust that had gotten put back on here, and then I'm going to start with the stencil. So you can see right here, this is the stencil itself. I'm going to drop a link in the description box below to show you kind of where I got one, but you can find them all over Etsy and kind of in thousands of different patterns and designs, but this is the one I'm choosing. And you can also choose different sizes, which is cool. So this will be my stencil. You want to make sure to have some tape because you're going to tape it in place. You apply the paint with a foam brush. This is really important because you don't want a lot of paint going into this. Paint itself, I'm using an exterior paint. It's actually just left over from when we had our house painted. This is the darker color that's in our eaves and some of our trim. And then I'm probably gonna be using this or just maybe dipping straight out of there. I haven't decided yet, but I have it all ready. So that's all you need to get started. Lucas thinks I'm crazy to be using this stencil, but I'm really excited about it. It's gonna look awesome. So I really quick want to point out a couple things because prepping your stencil into place is probably the most important part. Depending on what kind of stencil you use will kind of depend a little bit on placement and things. But if you're using a pattern where it's going to be repeating, so these three things, it's important to understand how the pattern is going to repeat itself. For example, the finished pattern of this stencil, these three triangles are actually part of this main square, so it helps you line it up as you repeat the pattern. Another thing when stenciling on concrete, you're gonna run into, at least if you have old concrete like me, I don't know if you can tell, but my surface is not fully even. I have some bits of concrete, where it's going to not give me a perfectly flush surface to paint over. So these spots you just have to be a little bit careful and take it slow. I have another kind of bumpy bit right there. And then if you have a stencil, and make sure you remember which side is up too, because that might affect the pattern too. So I'm just taking note that the Stencil Lab brand on mine is facing up. So when I move the pattern down, I remember, which way is which. And then from here, it's just about taking it really slow. You just want, again, a foam brush like this one. You're gonna dip it, and it's really about kind of doing like a blotting motion right here. You don't want a lot of paint. You don't want to be doing this. That's where you're going to get bleeding lines. So if you just very, very little paint is the key. And if you need a deeper color, you can work in layers, but for sure, you don't want a lot of paint. I can't stress that enough. this is kind of what it looks like after I went through it. Let's take the stencil up and see how it looks. Pretty good. I'm happy with it. My lines are relatively crisp. I have some concrete showing through and I'm okay with that. If you didn't want it, this is always a good time to just carefully kind of go back through and maybe fill in some of those holes if you don't want them, but I'm excited about this. This color is nice. So now, you remember how I told you these three help repeat the pattern? I'm going to show you exactly what that means. So this is how it was. Let's see if I can figure this out. So you're just going to basically move it over. And this is lining up with this. And basically this kind of helps you to, oops. Since you're using, I mean, you want to be careful not to disturb the paint you just did too much, but you're using such little paint when you're stenciling, it dries relatively quickly. You just really want to make sure that this is lined up nice and good. Everything's level, and then you carry on. You may wonder if there's a certain spot you want to start your stenciling at. There's really no right or wrong answer to it. Like obviously, you know, you always test something in a discrete location, but when you're stenciling concrete, like if you mess up, I mean, it's hard, there's no way to fix it. And if you're doing a pattern like this, you know, you want to start in a corner, which is what I did over on this side. But my thought, starting kind of on this side of the concrete run rather than the other side, is that this is the door into our garage. I figure if I don't get it right, you know, you kind of, if you don't get it right on your first go, or you mess something up as you're getting into the rhythm of it, you can always put a rug right here, a little doormat to kind of cover up something if it's really bad. But you should definitely just go into this knowing there will be imperfections, and that's okay. It's kind of part of the fun of, you know, DIYing and doing things like this. At least I like that. Another thing to keep in mind is, as you do, you know, more and more, your brush is going to hold a lot of paint more than you realize, so you don't have to like dip every single time. Sometimes just like push a little bit harder and then move that paint around basically. Okay, let's see how that looks. It's a little windy today. That looks good. Okay, I'm a few rows in, and I just wanted to touch base with you guys, because as you're like moving, you know, whatever direction you're going, you're lining up like a horizontal row with a vertical row. And I know Stencil Lab does a really good job having like extra cutouts so you can line it up appropriately. So sometimes they don't line up perfectly. So you can see there's kind of a blank spot I left here and here because these were the extra ones from this stencil, and that's the extra one from that stencil. And kind of what I did is, instead of going crooked in one direction, I just kind of took the gap and tried to make it, I don't know how to explain this. Like I took a little bit from this one and a little bit from that one and tried to keep the stencil as straight as possible. Some people might choose to go through and like fill that in. Personally, I am not, because I'm afraid I'll end up with triangles or diamonds that are like extra fat. So I'm not doing that. When I move this over, you know, I think it's going to even itself out. And I've been doing that on a few other ones, and so far it looks pretty darn good, I think. So just something to keep in mind. It doesn't have to be, or it might not be lining up perfectly, and that's okay. Just try to keep in mind, you know, the shape itself and keep that square and ignore maybe being perfect on lining it up. Kind of see it here. You know, if I have it straight on that top right, it's not straight here. But if I have it straight here, it's really off up there. So kind of what I'm trying to do is just actually kind of keep this one, like the hips of this, as good as possible, because that makes, you know, this pattern square. And then I just kind of close the gap in between those two, and that's how I'm gonna paint the stencil. But I'm just gonna leave this gap here and that gap there and not touch those two triangles. Just paint the rest all the way through.
Okay guys, the stenciling is complete. That took way longer than I thought, but I knew it was gonna take a while. But it definitely took me, I don't even remember now, a couple days and then a couple nights of just finishing it up. But I'm really happy with how it turned out.
Stay tuned. Next week I'm going to be sealing this concrete to protect it. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave me a comment. See you next week.